context. What you're looking at is a rural-urban continuum map drawn in 2013. They'll be doing another one in 2023. But we've taken the population numbers for what are the blue counties are essentially the more rural counties, okay? So if you add up those counties, there are roughly 32 counties in that rural area. They make up 16% of the state's population. If you then go into the non-metro areas, what you're looking at is 50% of the population, not 16%, 50% of the population, and you're looking at 68% of the state's land map. Imagine now the campuses, imagine now the highway systems, and you are looking at a significant player in the contribution to the well-being of the state of Wisconsin, the economy, the number of people, et cetera. What is driving rural resurgence now is not just the troubles facing that 16% of the population in the smaller rural areas, which are lack of access to health care, lack of access to public safety, elderly. So one out of that 16%, 27% of that population 65 or older. There is a concern about the capacity of those problems, if we don't do something now, to bleed into the entire state. So rural resurgence is going to be an issue for the next couple of years. Why do we care about that? We care about that because we're at a particularly unique moment in time, because for better, regardless of how you feel about it, the American Rescue Plan Act has committed $2.4 billion to local units of government in the state of Wisconsin. Those folks, you folks out there know this, you identified the number one issue is workforce recruitment in the state. We don't have the workforce we need. Concluded that we can't get the workforce and keep the workforce we want if we don't address a series of issues, including obviously the population size, but housing, broadband, early care, health care, transportation, energy, and across the board, a series of issues. That's what these conversations are about. It is a matter of trying to understand how to coordinate, how to seize this moment in time so that we can actually turn things around in Wisconsin. And it's going to happen one way or the other. The question is, how close can we get to the right way, to the most productive way? And on that note, what we did when we set out to do the rural resurgence piece is we took a grid and we said, well, let's take a look at all the things that people are doing and concerned about in the rural areas, et cetera. Let's take a look then across the top at who participates and impacts that capacity. Let's take a look at things like urgency, applicability, sustainability, and implementation. Let us keep in mind that what we were looking for as outcomes is better sufficiency, of whether it's healthcare or workforce or whatever else it may be, access, sustainability, which means are we paying for it, quality, productivity, and outcomes. And so the day is about what are the priorities, those that have already been selected and are being acted on? What's it going to take to get all of that done? Is there a rural model for that? And who does what? The outcome of this round of sessions is essentially the old action or decision accelerator. You look at context, you look at priorities, you look at sustainability, and you look at best practices. To get to an action accelerator, you then do due diligence, and you talk about transitional management. This is the 7th of these sessions that we've done on all these different issues I just referenced. The follow-up on this will be to come back to you folks around the state and talk about, okay, so here's where we are on priorities. What does that action plan look like, okay? Where are we in the midst of this? How do we do the best we can? And how do we find a synergy and an energy between the private sector and the public sector that works best for everyone? So with all of that, let me turn it now over to Mark O'Connell's good friend, Jeff Mayers. Jeff and I have known each other a very long time. I always love to have Jeff as a facilitator because, as he was introduced, he is the president of WisPolitics. No one understands the legislature better than Jeff Mayers. And so when he asks questions, he's asking questions that he thinks legislators might be interested in.
Thanks, Jim. I'm so hard to figure out that it took two people to introduce me there, so not sure about that. I want to thank Jim for organizing these things, Jim and Kenan. these things are tremendous efforts, and I've been lucky enough to be part of them across the state, and they're providing a wealth of information to help guide all of us to take Wisconsin forward. I also want to thank Mark O'Connell, and Mark is an architect of the shared revenue plan that's moving through the legislature that's going to bring a lot of money to rural Wisconsin, ensure a lot of money for the future of rural Wisconsin. So if you're wondering how much your community is going to get, ask Mark O'Connell. He has all the numbers. All right, so our job here, welcome panelists, is to just set the scene for what's to come. There's a lot of detailed discussions to come. But, we need to set the scene of what exactly is at stake here. So let's just start off, and beginning with you, Angel, let's start off with what are we trying to protect? What is the essence of this region, rural Wisconsin, that we're aiming to protect here?
From a regional standpoint, there's a lot to protect here. We all know that we have great education systems. We have great recreation, great quality of life, great private sector. And how do we protect that, right? Beyond that, we don't brag about what we have here enough. And I think that from a regional aspect, all we want to do is keep what we have, but we want to grow that well, and we want to grow our private sector. So what's at stake here is business, education, taxes, right? As our population decreases, all of that's impacted. All the issues that were mentioned prior are all things that are impacting our region on many levels, whether it's an entry-level position all the way up to an executive. So from a perspective from Synergy is we want to protect what we have, and what we have is tech, what we have is industry, what we have is education. My joke around the region and state now is I'm the walking, talking billboard for central Wisconsin. What better job do I get to have, right? And when I talk about those things, people are excited to be here. So how do we talk about those better? How do we queue ourselves up for more success? And how do we partner with all of you in this room, all of you online, and here on our panel to make those successes happen? Because without addressing some of those issues, we will start losing more people. People will leave our area. And again, if we can't compete with Illinois for taxes, we definitely have a problem, right? So my whole family's from Illinois. I can say that safely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's always good to get a dig in Illinois.
Yes.
All right, now to Paul LaPree. He's with Myra Construction, the chair of the Greater Wausau Chamber. What's your answer to that? What are we trying to protect here? What's the chamber trying to protect?
Well, I think the biggest asset for any community is its people. And economic development has always been focused on attracting new businesses. And I think part of the focus should be helping those businesses that have already invested in our community. Long-standing businesses that have invested time, energy, money, people to the communities. Let's help them out too. Stop the bleeding. This area knows very well some of the major companies that we have lost to larger cities because we, for a variety of reasons. But number one, I think we have to protect its people, and that's by helping those companies that have invested in the community. Number two is, I guess one of my favorite quotes has always been from Helen Keller, who said, "Being blind is easy, but being able to see without vision must be hard." And that takes vision, and that takes our elected officials, Mr. Gibbs, the county, the city, to work together to have vision for the future. How do we invest in our community? By creating a sense of place, a place that people are excited to come to. We have a very unique opportunity in Wausau. We literally have a downtown that is a blank slate in the heart of downtown. There's very few communities in the state that have this opportunity. And we have to have the vision, and we have to have the vision to do it right. We got one chance to make a generational change, and it's up to us to make sure that we do it right.
Mr. Gibbs, the chair of the Marathon County Board. What are we trying to protect here?
I think there's several things that we're trying to protect. I mean, obviously, we've got major changes in the total overall environment. Agriculture is changing significantly and has changed over the last 20 years. From the family farm, now we're seeing larger farms, and that requires infrastructure. We're seeing businesses, all of which those challenges that we see there require employees, require workers, and because of that, we're seeing needs for broadband expansion, education. One of the things that we're seeing is a decline in enrollment in our local two-year college community. And so protecting that educational system to be able to respond to the employer's needs. But expanding broadband, bringing broadband into this county has been a passion of mine and several other board members. And we've finally started to make a progress on that because it's such a critical infrastructure. The infrastructure that we're trying to protect also is the transportation system. And so the need for all-season roads. Right now, Marathon County only has 612 miles of county roads, and only a quarter of those are all-season. And so if we're going to have larger farms, larger transportation needs, that needs to be upgraded to all-season. But all of it is dependent upon housing to be able to bring people here, infrastructure, and education.
Okay, thanks. All right, now on to James Matheson. He's the Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for Aspirus, which is obviously has a big presence in the community. So what are we trying to protect here?
So I'd like to reframe it a little bit, because when I think about protecting and sustaining, in a sense, that for me takes a defensive position. And I think if we're trying to protect and sustain an environment that is starting to lose workforce or lose organizations, that's the wrong mindset we need to take. We need to take a growth mindset. We need to take more of an aggressive mindset where we have to leverage the talents, we have to leverage the resources we bring to Wisconsin, to the country, globally, and so forth. Leverage those and take more of a growth mindset to build on what platform we have. Because if we think about just protecting and sustaining, the natural thing is to sustain a declining platform. So our mindset needs to shift. We have to try things that are new, and we need to be open to new ideas and really push hard on growth potential and attracting talent to this market. And for us, that's a big challenge, because we have an opportunity. We have well over 500 open positions within our organization alone. And so hiring our way out of it is going to be very difficult. We're going to have to leverage technology to change the way we work. Other countries are already starting to use robotics to deliver medicines, to deliver care within a clinic or hospital setting. We're going to have to shift our mindset, even as an employer, to move in that direction. But that is a big shift culturally within just the communities we serve, but also within our organization I work at. So it's a lot of change, but we have to embrace the change and lead it versus wait for it to happen upon us.
Okay, I like the way you did that, so I'm going to stick with you. So let's talk about the challenges now, not to put a negative light on it, but everybody has mentioned challenges when I ask what are we trying to protect, right? So let's just explore those a little bit in a little time that we have to set the scene here. So James, you talked about 500 open positions. What's the challenge in not just the sheer number, but in making the pitch to recruit talent?
So when we look at some of the challenges, so if you look out about 10 years, they're predicting a significant shortage in physicians across the country. So some of the challenges we face in healthcare are not just a Wisconsin, Marathon County, or Wausau issue. There's national trends that we're facing. Nurses are supposed to be a significant deficit for our aging population. We're seeing fewer people, there's fewer births, replacing the workforce in the population. So we need to figure out how are we going to deliver in our organization care differently. And so it's developing a different level of talent. So we work closely with NTC, UW Stevens Point, and a number of different higher education programs around our region to develop our talent. But we're going to have to shift it to thinking, how do we become more creative? So creative problem solving is going to be a big focus of ours when we look for talent development. technology and capabilities to, as I mentioned, robotics and things of that sort, deliver care differently. That is going to take a new skill set, new mindset, and new capability that we're going to have to infuse into our marketplace. So being able to do so and attract people to this wonderful area is going to be, in my mind, a great opportunity, because I was talking to a few people last week. If you look at what's happened in California, so a number of people have moved out of California due to, well, a lot of things, but they've moved into Utah. Now they're moving, they continue to move east. And how do we attract some of those people that are moving west, because it's not all made up to, it's not as nice as what it's made up to be, to an area like ours where you have water, you have fresh air, you have a lot of those great things that people are looking for in their lifestyles. But what typically tends to attract people are good jobs. So we have to create that environment where there's good jobs to attract people in. Then they get here, they realize the great quality of life, and they'll stay.
All right, Chairman Gibbs, you mentioned broadband, and that's been a quest of yours. And there's a lot of money in the federal bills devoted to that, and all the providers are focused on getting those last groups. Is that the biggest challenge that you're facing, or do you see something else on the horizon that would supersede the broadband quest?
Sure, there's a lot of money, but there's also a lot of need. Just in Marathon County alone, the estimate is over $200 million just to bring a level of broadband service to every home. So when you look at $200 million and the number of homes, when you get into parts of the county that are rural, really rural, you get into the town of Harrison, for example, and a population of 500 people. The density of homes is very, very small, and so the ISPs, the internet service providers, are willing to provide, internet to the areas that are densely populated.
Right.
However, it's going to take partnerships to be able to bring that opportunity to those areas, and that's going to be the real challenge, is finding that last 20% or 10% of the homes that don't have internet or don't have broadband, and bringing it to them, because without it, those homes are in a desert. And that desert then means that they don't have access to potentially, health care, remote health care, or education. So that's really one of the challenges that we see. We think that there's a partnership development with the county and the ISPs to be able to make that happen.
Right. So that's a talent attraction effort in and of itself, right? How are you going to get somebody from California to move here if the internet is spotty? Okay, Paul, you mentioned, I think you used the term "stem the bleeding," and about making sure that solid corporations and companies don't leave. So what is the challenge? What's the essence of that challenge to convince everybody to hang in there in this marketplace?
Sure. I think it's important we tell our own story. I moved here in 1988, and all I heard was, "Oh, we're a little Chicago. We have everything Chicago has, except it's a lot safer. We're a little Minneapolis." Well, we have a pretty good story to tell ourselves. We've had terrific, innovative companies like GreenHeck, two guys that live 2 doors down from each other that went running every day and created a global phenomenon known as East Bay. We've got a pretty great story to tell. But we also have an outdoor element that no other place in the state has. We've got the highest vertical ski resort in the heart of our city. We have a world-class kayak course that runs through the heart of the city. We have a great story to tell, and I think it's really important that we tell our story for a lot of the reasons that some of the other panelists had said. We've got clean air, we've got great schools, we've got a lot of amenities, water everywhere. We've got a great story to tell, And I think it's important that we start telling our own and not trying to be something we are not.
All right, so branding, and but I want to stay with you, Paul, here. You mentioned also the downtown Wausau, and I've been coming to Wausau for decades. There's family members here, and so taking down the mall was a major thing, many years in the making, and there have been improvements all along in downtown Wausau. So you talk about the clean slate. I mean, what's your vision? As a longtime resident, as chair of the chamber, what's your vision for this space?
Sure. If you read any of the housing studies that are out there, this first round of development downtown isn't even going to scratch the surface of the number of units that we need. A population or a city that's successful has to have a significant amount of its population residing in its downtown market, and we don't have that. So I think the first and foremost is housing, that we need to create these cool places that are going to attract the next generation of workforce by having some affordable housing in the heart of our downtown. And that's going to generate a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz, and it's just going to grow outward from there. So housing is number one, and we have to be able to provide, meet some of the challenges that are not unique to Wausau. Childcare is an enormous problem. I don't think it's very far off in the future, and it's probably happening already, that organizations are going to be offering childcare as a benefit no different than health care. It's just going to be a benefit that has to be a part of it to attract that workforce. So if we can get ahead of it and start moving in a direction that's going to attract that next generation of workforce, what do they want? They want to have a really vibrant downtown and the opportunity to be a part of it. So housing, childcare, things of that nature, I think are very important.
Right. So Wausau is the hub of the region, a multi-county region, and which you're promoting. So what's the biggest challenge you see in for the region, Angel?
When I travel and I talk about central Wisconsin, people are like, "Where is that? What is that? What's there? Can I get the same things I get in Madison?" Right. So a lot of our youth is asking those questions. I think the biggest challenge, and I said this when I did an interview previously, we have to stop being Wisconsin nice a little bit, and we have to brag about ourselves. Our biggest challenge, as Paul said, is we need to talk about what we have here. We have technology. We have opportunity here. We just need the people to see it, whether that's young, whether that's older, retired. It doesn't matter what stage of life. We have a little bit of everything for everyone. And by sharing our stories, our real stories, business, startup, tech, those things, it attracts those people. It attracts people to say, wow, this is a great place that I want to start a career. I want to go to school. I want to grow my family, right? Because once we start talking about it, and usually when I get really passionate like this and I'm talking about it, people start researching us and looking at what's happening. So definitely I would iterate what Paul said as well.
Yeah, and the downtown, remaking the downtown. I've seen, the square has been improved, and but the arts facilities have been improved. But still, this is a major thing that's happening. And then if that's done right, that helps the whole region. Okay, so we've set the scene here. We're going to be on time. So I want to thank our panelists. So give them a round of applause. And now we're going to go to the diversification of the economy, led by Jim Wood with Mr. Ekman. Angel, you're up here for everything. Okay, John Roberts, Darren Ackley, Jenny Resch, and Dan Smith. So come on up.
I'm going to start with John. Dave, would you like to introduce John?
I'd love to. John Roberts is a good friend, a colleague. John is one of the principals at TIP Strategies, which is our strategic economic development planning partner, and he's happy to help introduce some of the work that we've done with him. Fantastic human being, on the edge of what